another interesting topic on hand. It's all about blockchain application in financial services. Our speaker is the CEO and co-founder of Philippine Digital Asset Exchange. He started his career as a management associate in HSBC, where he held various roles in treasury, retail banking, and wealth management. He then became a vice president and headed the HSBC Trust Department. In 2017, he graduated from the Wharton School with an MBA, major in finance and real estate. He's also a CFA charter holder. While trading cryptocurrencies, he realized that blockchain technology has a far greater applications than speculative trading or lowering costs of remittance. It has the potential to make capital markets more efficient and accessible to both issuers and investors. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Mr. Michel Gaba, CFA.
Hi. Hello. Tatest ko lang at gumagana. Nai-load pa. So thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to this big audience. Just a quick show of hands. Who's familiar with cryptocurrencies? Wow, okay, that's a lot. You see, in talks similar to this last year, maybe we could have, one or two people who know a bit about Bitcoin, nobody who knows about Ether, but it's nice to see that people are at least familiar with cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. It's nice because blockchain technology is arguably, and I can go on record saying this, the most influential piece of technology to hit the financial services industry since the internet. And I say that because, particularly in the Philippines, there are a lot of applications and the market is very supportive of them. So this afternoon, I just want to give you a quick background on what blockchain technology is, right? After that, we'll talk about cryptocurrencies a little bit. Actually, just one cryptocurrency. We'll talk about Bitcoin because I think that's probably what people keep hearing about. Ano ba yung Bitcoin na yan? Right? And third, I'll talk about the Philippine setting. Right? What are we doing here as a country, and what our company is doing in response to what's happening in the Philippine market. The best way to describe what blockchain technology is by explaining the problem that it solves. Right now, it's so easy for us to send documents electronically, send emails electronically, and that's all well and good, right? When I create a PowerPoint presentation, for example, this one, and I sent it to the CFA Society for showing here at this event, I didn't actually send the original. I still had the PowerPoint presentation. I just sent them a copy. Okay? And that's how the internet works, right? Everything is sent and stored in a database, and everyone just downloads off of that database. But if we're exchanging items of value, for example, shares of stock or land titles, it's very important that when the sender sends the asset, that he no longer has it. Does that make sense? Okay. So it's a very simple problem, but for a very long time, there was no solution to it until blockchain technology. Now, how does it work? Here on your screen is a very simplified depiction of applications. Okay? You will have every application has some sort of front end. Let's say your Grab, your GCash apps, your Paymaya. You have some front end. That's the one that you interact with. And then there's a back end where all the processes take place. And there's a database, okay, which is kind of like the master copy of everything that's happened or that the app has processed. So that's the typical model. With blockchain, it allows you to distribute that ledger across a wide network of nodes. Okay? And why do we want it to be distributed, or what's the benefit of having it distributed? The main benefit is security, right? Because your data is distributed across a wide range of nodes, it's very, very, very difficult, okay? Virtually impossible to alter one database without the alteration being rejected by the others. Does that make sense? Okay. So when people say na Bitcoin is unhackable, what they mean is if I send one Bitcoin to, let's say, this gentleman right here, the transfer is unequivocal, right? There's no disputing the fact that I transferred one Bitcoin to another person. And even if I try to manipulate the records or manipulate the transaction, I will not be able to do that. Because the Bitcoin network right now is supported by hundreds of thousands of independent nodes, and you would literally have to, quote-unquote, hack each one simultaneously within 10 minutes before a block is created in order to alter that transaction. So that's why it's quote-unquote unhackable. Now, I already mentioned Bitcoin. What's Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the very first application of blockchain technology. And all Bitcoin does is it keeps track of how many Bitcoins a person owns. Right? This is how it works. If I have a Bitcoin wallet, okay, and my friend George, actually wala akong friend na George, I just, made that up. And my friend George has his own Bitcoin wallet, and I decide to send I decide to send one Bitcoin to him. How it works is, parang siyang email, right? I input George's public address, I send one Bitcoin, and then that transaction gets authenticated by nodes on the Bitcoin network. And once it's validated and authenticated, it gets written into the ledger. Okay? And when I say ledger, I actually mean ledgers. Okay? It gets written everywhere. Right? Now, what if I don't have the one Bitcoin? Well, obviously, I won't be able to send the transaction, right? Because it will reject my attempt. Now, if you think about it, before Bitcoin had any price, that's all it was. It's just a piece of record. That's why that's why a little over 6 years ago, someone decided, I'm gonna buy 2 pizzas with 10,000 Bitcoins, because Bitcoins weren't valuable then, right? Because Bitcoin is just a record of how much units you own in that Bitcoin ledger. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, I'll skip that part first. Now, a lot of you might be wondering, and trust me, ever since I entered this space, by the way, a bit of backstory. I really come from the finance side. So when Mr. Larry was sharing earlier about how Fin people dress up like this, Lito, who's head of the FinTech Alliance, I think he was the previous speaker, wore a shirt and then a jacket. That's how FinTech people dress up. Ako naman, I try to go more on the tech side because actually at heart, I'm really Fin. Okay, so I'm overcompensating. And whenever I'm in settings and I talk to them about what I do, I always get asked, why should I buy Bitcoin? Okay, it's not backed by anything, it's not valuable. And in a way, they're right? Bitcoin is not backed by anything. Right? It's not backed by an asset, it's not backed by a company. Bitcoin is just Bitcoin. So why is it worth $11,000 per Bitcoin? That's because you have to look at Bitcoin as you would look at a currency. Now, what am I talking about? Do you have cash in your wallets now? Yes? Okay. Let's say you have 50 pesos in your wallet, right? That 50 pesos, it's really just a piece of paper. Okay? A lot of people still think na, oh, it's backed by gold, etc. That's not true anymore, right? We went off the gold standard in the 70s, and that piece of paper is really just a piece of paper. Now, why is it worth 50 pesos? It's worth 50 pesos because if you take that piece of paper and you go to 7-Eleven, you are legally entitled to obtain 50 pesos worth of goods and services. Does that make sense? Okay. So, what do you call these things? You call these things instrumental goods. Okay? The value of that piece of paper is equivalent to what you can exchange it for. Clear? Okay. Now, if you look at all the currencies in the world, sige, Philippine peso na muna. What it means is the sum of the value of all the Philippine pesos printed or in bank accounts or in your time deposits, etc. The value of all that money is equivalent to all the goods and services that you can buy with a Philippine peso. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, that's the reason why whenever the economy does well, right? Whenever we produce more output every year, it affects the currency, right? It affects our foreign exchange rate because the more goods and services you can obtain with the Philippine peso, the higher is the value of the peso. Clear? Okay. So, what if tomorrow the government decides, you know what, we're not going to use Philippine pesos anymore. Okay? We're going to use the US dollar for Philippine transactions. What's going to happen to the value of your piece of paper? Wala na, alright? The value will disappear. And in the same, following the same logic, if the US government decides, you know what, sawa na tayo dito sa, sa US dollar, green lang, corny. Mas maganda multicolor. So, they say na, okay, gamitin natin Philippine pesos. Right? Philippine pesos becomes legal tender in the US. What will happen is, the value of the Philippine peso will go up. Alright? Because it will imbibe all the goods and services that you can buy with the US dollar. Clear? Okay. So, this is the reason why Bitcoin has value. Because Bitcoin right now is being exchanged globally for a variety of purposes. Okay? Some include remittance, right? Some for speculative trading, some for actual goods and services. Okay? If someone from the Philippines is importing something from, for example, Nigeria, okay? It's very expensive to transact, right? These people sometimes use cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. Clear? Okay, so when you're asked, wala namang value yung Bitcoin, pagdating niya mamaya sa dinner table and your mom asks you, ba't ka bumibili ng Bitcoin? Wala namang value yan. Sabi mo, ma, it's an instrumental good. Okay? So, what else drives the value of currencies? Okay? So obviously, I talked about the use component, okay? But there's also the expected growth component, all right? And that is that component that reflects our anticipation of how much this piece of asset will be used going forward. Okay? If we feel that the Philippine peso will be used more extensively in the future, the value of the peso goes up. It's the same with Bitcoin. So in 2017, you saw Bitcoin shoot up in price. Yeah. And that's reflective of people's expectations. Not just about Bitcoin, but also about blockchain technology. There are so many use cases for blockchain technology, and Bitcoin is really just one. Okay? And you can make the argument it's not even the most exciting. There are so many applications. In real estate, for example, what if our land titles are all in token form? Right now, 70% of the land titles in the Philippines are contested. Okay? Either may caso, either it's not clear where the boundaries are, or the record doesn't exist, right? Or it's a fake title. 70% is contested. If you put ownership of real estate in tokens, then you can solve a lot of these problems, right? When I transfer the token from my wallet to your wallet, that's an unequivocal transfer, okay? You have other applications as well. Identity, and I think, well, the government is working with a firm that will use, I'm not sure, at what stage of production this is, but supposedly the national ID system will be utilizing some form of blockchain technology. And what it does is, if you, right now, if you want to obtain any kind of service, you need an ID, correct? Okay. How many IDs do you have? Marami. Who has one lang? One ID. At least one pala. At least one ID. Alright. Who has two? 3? Wow, dami ah. 4. 5. Ang dami pa rin. 6. 7. 7. Talaga. 8. Okay, ang dami. Baka yung 8 meron na ring student permit. Hindi nakasama yan. We have a driver's license, a passport, voter's ID, SSS, multi-purpose ID. We also have seafarer's ID, postal ID, SSS, TIN. Dami, okay? If you put identity on the blockchain, okay, you will just have one massive ledger, okay, or sorry, one massive distributed ledger that keeps track of your name, your date of birth, your gender at birth, and that stays in the blockchain. Now, if you apply for, let's say, a driver's license, all the LTO will do is assess if you can actually drive and then update your record on the blockchain. Now, you legally can drive. Okay? If you will apply to vote, for example, election na, okay? You don't have to go to the COMELEC anymore, right? Because the blockchain will already have a record if you're legally 18 or not. Okay? And you can simply make your selection, and the blockchain will also record who you voted for. So the blockchain will also count, will tabulate. The blockchain will protect itself against hacks. So you can imagine how much, how this can change the way we vote, and also and broadly speaking, the way we live. Now, I talked about these non-finance applications just to give you an idea of how broad the applications can be. But arguably, the most promising use cases right now are in finance. I'm talking about securities, payments, contracts, etc. Alright. Now, this slide shows you just a very small selection of the things that large financial institutions are doing using blockchain technology. At the far left, okay, top left, the Swiss exchange is using a blockchain-based system. Basically, it's a digital asset exchange in order to trade equity tokens and debt tokens. What are equity tokens and debt tokens? Who here trades stocks? Konti lang. I'm surprised. I thought there'd be more. Okay, there are some, right? When you own a share of stock, right, it's either you have the physical certificate, okay, with your name on it, or you have an account with a broker, okay, like All Financial, BPI Trade, etc., etc. Now, the Swiss exchange is allowing its platform to be nimble enough to trade equity tokens. Meaning, think Bitcoin, but instead of not being backed by anything, it's actually backed by ownership stake in a company. Does that make sense? Okay, so it's just combining the two. ICE, that's the holding company of the New York Stock Exchange. They're also building their own digital asset exchange. The World Bank last year issued bonds in token form. Okay. In the Philippines, ano nangyayari? Well, in the Philippines, the BSP since 2017 has issued rules around virtual currency exchanges. Now that's very important because financial services is one of the industries that rely a lot on trust. Okay? If you don't trust the bank that you're dealing with, you're not gonna leave your money there, right? The reason why we go to BDO, BPI, Metrobank is because they've been around for so long and because they're regulated, right? The BSP is supervising them. Now, so in 2017, what this did is the BSP decided to stake its credibility, right, in regulating institutions that deal in cryptocurrencies. So now you can actually trade these safely using licensed institutions. More recently, about 2 months ago, the SEC released rules on digital asset exchanges. How are they different from the BSP rules? Well, the SEC is a securities regulator, which means that if you want to tie tokens to ownership of companies or to debt obligations of companies, you have to get their approval. Meaning the SEC has to have the right to supervise you. So 2 months ago, they released rules that actually allowed, or at least the draft rules, that's gonna allow firms in the Philippines to issue equities and debt in token form. Now, I will, wrap up in about 2 minutes so that we can have probably more time for Q&A because blockchain technology and finance is a very, very deep topic and I imagine that some of you might have questions. Okay, we'll skip this part. PDAX, the company that I operate, is a digital asset exchange. We're a platform where people can buy and sell digital assets. And right now, what you can buy and sell through us only are cryptocurrencies. Right? But eventually, we're gonna have equity tokens, debt tokens, commodity tokens, and everything will be digital, right? Okay, so I think we can head towards Q&A. I left my emails on the screen if you have any questions. Again, this is a very exciting topic and this is also a very exciting development for a country like the Philippines, which historically has had very archaic financial market infrastructure. And blockchain technology can do a lot to make sure that going forward, people can invest freely, people can invest safely, and people can raise capital from financial markets more effectively. So I'll stop there and let's begin Q&A.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Now for our Q&A round. For our Q&A, our moderator is a management consultant and currently serves as a Chief of Business Development of Seedbox Technologies, a ATR asset management subsidiary. He has 15 years of experience in the financial industry with the extensive experience in both traditional and digital sales management and business development. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Ton Patron.
Thank you, Archie. Good afternoon, Nigel.
Good afternoon.
Hi, guys. So let me just ask, are there any questions specific to the topic? Anyone? Okay, parang wala. Naintindihan niyo ba yung discuss ng ating guest speaker? Yes, okay. So, there being none, let me just go through my very high-tech app. Alright, so there's a question from one of the audience. Can Bitcoin be separated from blockchain? I'm not sure, maybe that you can put that the context of your discussion earlier.
Maybe I'll answer that by defining what they are, right? So blockchain is the distributed ledger supporting Bitcoin. Okay? So let's say meron kang wallet address 123 with 3 Bitcoins, and then wallet address 456 with 2 Bitcoins. Blockchain is the ledger that keeps track of who owns what. So I'm not sure if I understood the question, but blockchain, without the blockchain, there really is no Bitcoin. But if the question is more around, can we set aside Bitcoin and then just focus on blockchain technology? Yes. The answer is most definitely yes, right? As with any piece of technology, blockchain is just a tool, right? It's just a record-keeping system, and all that matters is what you use it for, and it doesn't have to be Bitcoin.
Okay, I hope that was clear to everyone. Is that guy raising his hands or just stretching? I'm sorry. Okay, so maybe let me go to a hot topic for a lot of regulators nowadays. So how can you see? Do you see blockchain or even PDAX for your case being able to help in promoting financial inclusion in the Philippines?
Definitely. So the genesis for a company is really financial inclusion. Take the Philippine market, for example. We don't have an order book market for bonds. We don't have an open market for FX. We don't have an open market for commodities. We don't have derivatives. All we have is the PSE, and the PSE only lists equities. And as of the last published statistic, only 0.8% of the Philippine population have ever accessed the PSE. Now, a big reason for that is because brokers cannot service everyone in the country. They cannot service people in the far provinces. And even though these people might have capital that they can lend to the economy, they're unable to do so. So PDAX is trying to change that by turning every form of security into tokens. From a regulatory standpoint, we've had 3 very favorable rules released publicly by the SEC over the past year. The first is on crowdfunding. So what it means is, if you're starting a business, you can now crowdfund, right? You can solicit funding from the public online. Obviously, there's a process. The second set of rules are on digital asset offerings, or ICOs. Meaning, if you're a company, again, you want to sell ownership in your company, and you want to do it in token form, you now can, okay? Provided you register with the SEC. The last set of rules are around digital asset exchanges. So something like PDAX, and we're trying to work with the SEC to make sure that when you trade these assets in the secondary market, it's in a regulated and safe manner.
Okay, thanks, Nigel. So let me bring back the question to PDAX specifically. You guys want to find out how you can earn from Bitcoin? Yes. Okay, I think that's the biggest question. Not just Bitcoin. I mean, PDAX has Litecoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, XRP, Ripple. All of those are in your exchange already, and they can buy that now. And I think by invitation first, right? So how do you and for traditional investments people, finance guys, you will probably be looking at value for a lot of this. So how do you value cryptocurrency in the current paradigm of looking at investment, because you don't have cash flow, number one, which is something you look for investment if you're a value investor. If you're not there, then you're purely looking at supply and demand. right? So how do you do that and how can you help the investors who will get into PDAX understand all of this?
That's a very loaded question. I'll start first by addressing, hopefully, our potential clients. When you log into PDAX, you create an account and you trade. It's really a secondary market. So your income or your profits and gains will really come from buying low and selling high. Now, if your question is Bitcoin still gonna keep going up? I don't know. And I don't think anyone will claim to really know where it will go. To the other point, actually, I guess the biggest problem that the traditional finance industry had when Bitcoin came along was this cannot be a real asset, or we cannot have these on our portfolio because how do you value these things, right? You cannot do your usual DCF, there's no free cash flows, there's no comparable instruments. Sometimes in the absence of DCF, people use market comparables to determine its value. So the mindset that people kind of take now is that it's like currency, right? Which means the value of that piece of asset corresponds to the underlying economy that uses that asset. But you encounter another problem. I have no clue who uses Bitcoin today, right? Because it's not recorded anywhere that you can just inspect, 500 million worth of goods and services are being exchanged using Bitcoin. And I'm really just talking about Bitcoin there, right? There are other currencies with very different means of valuing.
It's like XRP is also related to the actual dollar supply, right?
Actually, see XRP, you can look at that, yeah, Ripple, who's one of the investors in PDAX. XRP is actually very similar to Bitcoin in that it's also used for sending money, right? The advantage of XRP is that you can send XRP in seconds, whereas with Bitcoin, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes. So valuing XRP is a tougher thing to do, largely because XRP is, ownership of XRP is still concentrated on an actual company, which is Ripple. Ripple still holds probably about 30 to 40%, I'm not sure, of the outstanding XRP, which means they use that same secondary market to fund their operations. So it's very hard to determine how one should value XRP simply because there's a very big player, and whatever that player says is the value of XRP is more likely to be the case.
Alright, so understand. So are there any questions from the audience outside of what we're seeing here? So, okay, let me just read a few more. Is the use of blockchain tech a necessity for all kinds of crypto transactions? Do you advise remittance companies like TrueMoney, Palawan Express, OK Remit to immediately avail of blockchain?
Right, so your first question is blockchain technology necessary for all kinds of, I guess, cryptographic transactions? The answer to that is no. Okay? So the general terminology for this technology is distributed ledger technology. Okay? Blockchain is just one particular, I guess, one way of distributing the ledger. Right? There are others. And to the second question, should remittance companies use this already? Well, it depends on where you are in the remittance value chain. Okay? If you're a remittance agent, meaning meron kang tindahan, meron kang mga ahente, meron na may hawak ng cash, I'm not sure how much blockchain can help you. But if you're doing cross-border remittances, blockchain technology might be the best way to go. The reason why is if your mom is in Saudi Arabia, for example, and she wants to send you money, what happens is she brings out her Saudi riyals and pays the remittance company, and that currency gets exchanged for the US dollar, and then the US dollar gets converted to peso, and then the peso is paid out to the beneficiary. The conversion from one currency to another incurs cost, right? Because you have FX dealers.
Yes.
That's the reason why the cost of remittance in the Philippines is 8%. Because we're a thinly traded currency, right? There's no direct, Saudi to Philippines currency market, right? Kaya dumadaan pa ng dollar, and that introduces a lot of cost.
Right, so I guess what we need to appreciate is what's happening at the back, right? For users, it's just a matter of sending money and then receiving it at the other end. But within that ecosystem, are people trying to convert also, and then also clearing is an issue, right? So where does it clear in terms of the whole overall transaction? Okay, now let me step back a little on the discussion for the usage into maybe careers. There's a question here. Does one need an IT background to be able to build a blockchain? Considering the white paper on Bitcoin is public, a lot of white papers on different cryptocurrencies is public, also publicly available. Do you need an IT background? In your experience, are a lot of people working for you in the IT industry, or?
So, I myself don't have a tech background. I am a student of finance, I come from finance. It really depends on the role. In our company, we have compliance officers who have legal backgrounds. We have customer services associates who used to work for BPOs. We have product developers, product managers and developers who come from tech backgrounds. So yes, if you want to be building technology, it's very difficult to do without some sort of IT or comp-sci background.
So on the blockchain, how can you ensure data privacy within the ecosystem?
It's a great question. So remember, the Bitcoin ledger is a public distributed ledger, meaning anyone can access the ledger and see wallet XYZ has 10 Bitcoins. So there's no privacy there, except for the fact that you actually have no clue who owns wallet XYZ. So Bitcoin is pseudonymous, right? Not anonymous. But that's just Bitcoin, right? There are other blockchains or use of blockchains that require permissions. Okay? So you have public blockchains, private blockchains, and permission blockchain. I'll give you a good example for permission blockchains. If we were to have a real estate registry with the use of blockchain technology, we might want to consider permission blockchain, meaning there is only a trusted select few who can write onto the blockchain, meaning maybe the registry of deeds, right? Sila lang yung pwede mag-formally transfer ng assets from one person to another. But the viewing of the ledger is public. Right? So you can
create, as a company, you can create your own ledger. So I guess that answers one question here. When companies say that they use blockchain technology, do they create their own network of ledgers? So basically, that's what you're saying.
So it depends. So a lot of companies now who claim to have their own, they're just building protocols
of access existing DLT or
exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
All right. So next one the Philippines has a relatively conservative investor market. Is it ready for the blockchain market? And especially for PDAX coming in, right? Maybe that's relevant for you as a business as well.
That's right. That's a great question. For cryptocurrencies, I think it'll be challenging for people to invest in cryptocurrencies, considering they don't even invest in stocks today, right? But I think the real direction for our industry, and I guess I can speak really for my company, is to use the existing technology in traditional markets, like in the case of equity tokens or debt tokens.
Yeah.
These are real investment products, and we're just converting them into a different form.
Okay, so talking about converting them into different forms, accessing. Maybe you can help our audience understand how can they acquire or buy Bitcoin. I myself use a different wallet because I haven't been approved by PDAX yet. Maybe after this, but maybe you can help our audience out, especially if those who want to buy cryptocurrency. You have a few already in the platform. What's a step-by-step process? How do they sign up? How do they fund it? And then eventually, how would they be able to trade it?
So actually, whenever people ask me how to buy Bitcoin, I actually refer them to a very, very good VCE. So you can open a coins.ph wallet and fund it using your pesos. They accept cash at various outlets, and they also accept bank transfers. And yeah, you can buy Bitcoin there. The biggest difference between PDAX and coins is PDAX is an open order book exchange, meaning the buyers are customers, the sellers are customers. And so you facilitate market price. With coins, you'll be trading mostly with just the coins.
Coins becomes a market maker, essentially.
Correct. They're the dealers.
All right. So yeah, that simplifies the process, right? So maybe just to clarify that for coins, it's really buying and acquiring the crypto within coins, and for PDAX it's like a stock market exchange where you buy it from other customers.
That's correct.
So how do you see the margins when it comes to purchasing it from coins or being able to buy it in PDAX? Like coins has a 4% margin on buy-sell offer. For PDAX, is that the same margins you're looking at? Lower?
So actually, ideally it would be lower, right? And that's inherent in the business model. Think of a money changer, for example. It's the money changer that decides how much they'll buy it from you and how much they'll sell it from you. But on PDAX, it's the market that decides. If everyone in this room were to trade cryptocurrencies, each one of us would have a buy and sell price, right? And the order book exchange of PDAX will allow everyone to, okay, write all of your buy and sell prices, and then we will match the matching orders. But with coins, or like a traditional dealer model, we will all line up to one dealer and then execute at this price.
All right. Now, in since you're in that industry, do you see a potential for controlling cryptocurrency prices? The context of this discussion is really, how do you prevent overvaluation of the cryptocurrencies, right? And are there guidelines, or do you think that's still purely demand-supply thing on the pricing?
Right. So as a secondary market, it's really supply and demand, right? If someone really wants to buy at a very, very high price, good luck to him. But on the other, exchanges are also in charge of enforcing market conduct. This is the reason why our platform has been working with the SEC for a very long time. It's because we have to enforce certain rules. For example, if we notice the trading behavior of a particular client appears to be manipulative, then we would have to enforce some actions.
Okay, so another question here is how does the products of PDAX differ from the investment products offered by PSE and PDEX? I think it's quite obvious, right? Cryptocurrency is different from stocks, and PDEX is also a fixed income exchange. Yeah, so I guess
that's a great question though, because the products themselves are very different, but even the products listed on PDAX and PDEX now, you can actually convert them into token form.
Yes.
Similar to how you lodge a physical certificate into the PDTC for electronic shares, you can also do the same process for cryptocurrencies as soon as the rules are made more clear.
Yeah, okay. So next one, speaking of rules, PSE has licensed brokers and traders. Does that have an equivalent for PDAX? I understand PDAX is approved by BSP, but is there a regulation around the digital asset exchange in the Philippines?
Right, so the first draft of the digital asset exchange rules came out about a month ago. We've been working with the SEC for a very long time to try and get those rules out. So the answer is yes. There will also be membership requirements. The digital asset exchange will be recognized as an SRO, similar to the PSE. Yeah, and if we have, I think that was our signal. We don't have any more time, but I'm happy to talk more about the topic with anyone, anyone who's interested.
All right, so I guess there being no more time, so parang tapos na daw eh, no? Thank you very much, guys, and we hope that was a very educational session with